The stadium was already shaking, but then the lights suddenly went dark, and for 3 full seconds, nobody understood what was happening. The music stopped. The giant screens froze. Even Jimin looked confused. And then, over 50,000 voices exploded at the exact same time. A sound so loud, so emotional, that Jimin physically froze on stage. No choreography, no performance smile, just shock, real shock. His eyes widened as the entire KNK Stadium in Mexico transformed into a glowing ocean of purple light and screaming voices chanting his name. Jimin! 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 And in that moment, something inside him visibly broke. But here's the part nobody expected. This wasn't planned by BTS. This wasn't part of the show. Mexico Army had secretly prepared something so emotional, so overwhelming, that even the members themselves had no idea what was coming. And what happened next? People are still crying about it online. The night had already felt unreal from the beginning. Outside the stadium, hours before the gates opened, the streets looked more like a festival than a concert line. Purple banners hanging from railings. Fans singing BTS songs together under the hot Mexico evening sky. Street vendors selling handmade photo cards and glowing light sticks. And everywhere you looked, there were faces filled with anticipation. Some excited, some nervous, some already crying before the concert even started. Why? Because for many Mexican armies, this wasn't just another event. This was personal. Years of waiting, years of defending BTS, years of streaming, supporting, hoping, all leading to this night. And deep down, fans wanted to give the members something unforgettable, especially Jimin. But nobody realized just how far Mexico Army had gone to make that happen. Backstage, the atmosphere was completely different. Controlled chaos. Managers rushing between hallways. Stylists making last-minute adjustments. Dancers stretching silently in corners. And in the middle of all that noise, Jimin looked strangely calm. Almost too calm. Which honestly felt suspicious. Because usually before massive performances, there's tension. Adrenaline. Nervous energy. But this time, Jimin seemed reflective, quiet, occasionally staring toward the stadium entrance as if he could already hear the crowd beyond the walls. And maybe he could, because every few minutes, distant screams echoed through the backstage corridors. Thousands of fans chanting BTS names over and over again, the floor itself vibrating from the energy outside. But nobody backstage knew something else was happening too. Something hidden. Because while the staff focused on the show, Army was secretly preparing a surprise so massive it would completely hijack the entire concert. And somehow, not a single leak escaped. The concert began like an explosion. Lights flashing violently across the stadium. Bass shaking the seats. Fans screaming so loudly the opening VCR could barely be heard. And the second BTS appeared. Chaos. Pure chaos. The members stepped onto the stage surrounded by fire effects and thunderous music, but somehow the loudest reaction came the moment Jimin appeared on screen. It wasn't even close. The scream level instantly doubled. Phones shot into the air. People grabbed each other in disbelief. And Jimin? He laughed shyly at the reaction before trying to regain focus. But there was already something different in the atmosphere. Something emotional. You could feel it building underneath the excitement. Like the entire stadium was waiting for the perfect moment to unleash something bigger. And that moment was getting closer. The performances kept escalating. Song after song. Dance break after dance break. Every section of the stadium glowing purple like an endless galaxy. But what really stood out that night was Jimin's energy. He wasn't just performing. He looked genuinely happy, smiling constantly, making eye contact with fans, running across the stage with this almost childlike excitement that made Army completely melt. At one point, he stopped near the front row and crouched down just to wave directly at fans holding a banner for him. And the reaction. Immediate tears. One girl covered her face and collapsed onto her friend's shoulder because she couldn't handle the eye contact. But honestly, that was nothing compared to what was coming later. Because somewhere in the upper sections of the stadium, thousands of armies were waiting for a signal. And Jimin had absolutely no idea. About halfway through the concert, something strange started happening. Fans began checking their phones more frequently, passing messages, looking around nervously, small groups whispering to each other between performances. At first, nobody noticed. Not security, not staff, not even the members. But the tension was growing. Because timing mattered. Everything depended on perfect timing. And if even one section messed up, the entire surprise could fail. Now imagine that pressure. Tens of thousands of fans trying to coordinate one emotional moment without BTS finding out. Sounds impossible, right? But somehow, Mexico Army pulled it off. And when the moment finally arrived, it changed everything. The stage lights dimmed slightly before one of Jimin's major performance sections. The crowd roared instantly. His silhouette appeared on the giant screens, and the entire stadium exploded into screams before he even moved. The music started softly, gentle, emotional, and Jimin stepped forward with that graceful, almost unreal elegance he's known for. Every movement fluid. Every expression magnetic. You could feel the audience completely locked onto him. But then, the music suddenly cut. For one terrifying second, people thought something went wrong technically. Jimin stopped moving immediately. The dancers froze too. The stadium became strangely silent. And then, the surprise began. One small section in the crowd raised purple banners. Then another, until suddenly, the entire stadium transformed. Thousands and thousands of coordinated lights rose into the air simultaneously, creating a massive glowing message across the audience. A message for Jimin. And when he saw it, everything changed. You could literally see the confusion hit him first. Then realization. Then shock. Real, visible shock. His mouth parted slightly, eyes scanning the crowd over and over like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. The screaming became deafening. People were crying before he even reacted. Because everyone knew. This was no longer just a concert moment. This was emotional history being created in real time. But the message itself? That's what completely shattered him. You are our home. Simple words. But inside that stadium, they hit like an earthquake. Because fans weren't just cheering for an idol anymore. They were trying to tell him something deeper. Something human. And suddenly Jimin looked overwhelmed in a way fans rarely see publicly. He turned away briefly, hand covering his mouth, trying to smile while clearly emotional. And the crowd reaction became uncontrollable. People started sobbing. Actual sobbing. One fan recording near the barricade kept saying, "No, no, no, he's crying, oh my God." Because yes, Jimin's eyes were visibly watery. And once fans realized that, the entire atmosphere collapsed emotionally. But then something happened that pushed the moment even further. Instead of restarting the performance immediately, Jimin walked slowly toward the edge of the stage. No music, no choreography, just thousands of fans screaming while he stood there trying to process what was happening. And honestly, he looked vulnerable. Not weak, not broken, just deeply affected. Like he suddenly forgot he was supposed to be performing. And then he did something nobody expected. He bowed, slowly, deeply, toward the crowd. And the second he bowed, the stadium erupted louder than any concert moment that entire night. Because that bow didn't feel like celebrity fan service. It felt personal, like gratitude too big for words. And suddenly even other BTS members looked emotional watching him. But wait, because the biggest moment hadn't happened yet. Not even close. As Jimin stood there overwhelmed, the crowd suddenly began singing. Softly at first, almost shaky, then louder and louder, until the entire stadium became one giant voice. Tens of thousands of people singing directly to him. Not perfectly, not polished, but emotional in a way that made the entire stadium vibrate with feeling. And Jimin, he completely froze again. You could actually see him trying not to cry, looking up at the lights, laughing nervously, covering his face repeatedly. At one point he turned away entirely because the emotion became too much. And honestly, can you imagine being in that position? Hearing 50,000 people sing to you with that much love? That's not normal. That's overwhelming on a human level. And maybe that's why this moment became unforgettable. Because for a few minutes, Jimin wasn't just a global superstar. He looked like someone genuinely stunned that people cared this deeply. The cameras zoomed in closer. Big mistake. Because the second his face appeared on the giant screens, the entire stadium lost emotional control. Fans immediately noticed tears in his eyes. Tiny, but visible. And once Army noticed that, it was over. People started crying harder. Some couldn't even keep filming properly anymore because their hands were shaking too much. Online live stream chats exploded instantly. He's really crying. Mexico Army won. This is too emotional. Jimin, please don't cry or I'll cry too. And through all of it, Jimin kept trying to smile. That's what broke people the most. Because even overwhelmed emotionally, he still looked grateful. Still trying to comfort fans while being emotional himself. How do you not fall apart watching that? Seriously. Then came the moment nobody expected. Jimin finally grabbed the microphone. The stadium instantly became quieter. Not silent. Impossible. But quieter enough to hear him. And when he spoke, his voice cracked slightly. Just slightly. But enough. Enough to make the crowd scream emotionally all over again. He looked around slowly at the ocean of purple lights before laughing softly in disbelief. Then he said something simple. Something short. But something fans will probably remember forever. Mexico Army. This is crazy. The way he said it. Half laughing. Half emotional. Completely sincere. And honestly, that single sentence became iconic immediately. Because everyone could hear the emotion behind it. This wasn't scripted. This wasn't planned. This was genuine shock. And the crowd knew it. But here's what made the moment even more powerful. After calming down slightly, Jimin looked back at the giant fan message again. You are our home. And for a second, his expression completely changed. More serious. More emotional. Almost reflective. Then quietly, he placed his hand over his heart. No dramatic speech. No long emotional monologue. Just that gesture. And somehow, that tiny movement said everything. The stadium absolutely exploded. Because fans understood immediately. That was his answer. And honestly, That might have been the exact moment the entire concert transformed from amazing into legendary. Afterward, the performances continued. The music came back. The choreography resumed. The energy exploded again. But something had changed permanently. You could feel it. Jimin danced differently after that moment. Looser. More emotional. At times almost overwhelmed by the crowd reactions every time he appeared on screen. And fans responded with even more intensity. Every smile from him triggered screams. Every glance toward the audience caused emotional chaos. It became less like a concert, and more like one giant emotional conversation between Jimin and Mexico Army. That connection. You can't fake it. And maybe that's why the clips spread across the internet so quickly afterward. Because people could feel the authenticity, even through a screen. Hours later, after the concert ended, social media was completely flooded. Millions of views. Trending hashtags everywhere. Fans posting blurry videos through tears. People saying they had never experienced anything like it before. And honestly, many weren't even talking about the performances anymore. They were talking about the emotion, the connection, that moment where an entire stadium made one person feel deeply loved. And in return, he gave that love right back. That's rare, especially at this scale. And maybe that's why so many people are still replaying the clips over and over again, trying to relive that feeling. Because for a few unforgettable minutes inside KNK Stadium, the distance between artist and fans disappeared completely. And maybe that's the real reason this moment matters so much. Not because it went viral. Not because hashtags trended. Not because clips hit millions of views. But because it reminded people what music is supposed to do. Connect. Heal. Make strangers feel less alone. And somehow, in the middle of screaming crowds and flashing lights and massive stages, that's exactly what happened. Jimin didn't just perform that night. He felt everything with the fans. And the fans felt everything with him. That emotional exchange, that's what made the moment unforgettable. So now I want to ask you something. If you were inside that stadium that night, do you think you would have survived that moment emotionally? Be honest. Because I genuinely don't think most people would. And if this story brought back those emotions for you, if you felt even a piece of that magic again, then make sure to like, subscribe, and share this with another army who still can't stop thinking about what happened in Mexico. Because honestly, moments like this don't happen often. And when they do, they stay with you forever.